Mr. Chairman, thank you so very much for the courtesies extended. Let me thank the chairman of the full committee for his courtesies, and to Mr. Cummings, certainly for his courtesies as well, for my participation in this very vital hearing today. I am a member of the Judiciary Committee as well, and we held such a hearing some weeks ago, and so I can almost say deja vu. Let me thank Ms. Richards, first of all, as a fellow Texan, to thank her for the legacy of her family that has always been engaged in public service, and that's what I consider you and Planned Parenthood as doing. Coming from Texas, let me cite the Houston Planned Parenthood offices, of which I've been in and walked through and seen the clinics and seen individuals who fell into my arms, indicating that without Planned Parenthood, they would not be able to, in fact, have health care. Let me ask you very quickly as my time goes, it may be as I've been listening this afternoon that we have been mixing more than apples and oranges. It might be apples and potatoes, because we're talking about abortion, and when I say that, many of these questions have come forward, and I just wanted to read this quote from a senator in Oklahoma in discussing Planned Parenthood. My focus is to try to deal with the life issue. Defunding Planned Parenthood is just a sideshow for the real event. Has this come to your attention, Ms. Richards, that many are talking about something that really has nothing to do with your federal funding?
Well, I do think it's been a bit of a theme, and I think that is one thing I'd like to say. It's important that I don't really believe that an organization, a healthcare provider, should be discriminated against for providing a legal service, whether it's Planned Parenthood or a local community hospital or anyone else.
Let me follow up as well and hold this up and ask unanimous consent to place it into the record. And let me cite for some of my colleagues, Ohio, 28 clinics, 80,000 patients, 66,000 on contraception, total on sexual transmitted diseases, 105,000. Texas, 38 clinics, 150,000 patients, and 108,000 on contraception and others dealing with sexually transmitted diseases. But if those clinics went away, then we're talking about 28 in a big state like Ohio, 38 in Texas, thousands of women losing access to health care. Is that not correct, Ms. Richards?
That's correct.
And are you familiar with the Texas cases which challenge or discuss the legislative initiatives in 2014, 2015 that were literally implode clinics in Texas, and the Supreme Court decision that ruled in 2014 and 2015. I think the United States Supreme Court, maybe based on Roe v. Wade, maybe based on the fact that abortion services, of which are not part of the funding here, but in any event, just so my colleagues would know that, in my state of Texas, the state law would have cut off 75% of reproductive health care clinics. The Supreme Court indicated that the Texas law was unconstitutional, indicating that the separate work that you do dealing with people's right to choose is a lawful act and has nothing to do with federal funding. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
And the Supreme Court has indicated that abortion by law is not illegal in those cases.
And I know a lot of these are still on appeal. I do think, since we both come from Texas, I think it's important to know that when the state of Texas shut down the Texas Women's Health Program and to end Planned Parenthood's ability to serve women, there are 25% fewer women in Texas that are receiving care as a result. And so I think that's why it's so important that we don't ever put politics ahead of women's health.
Let me get these last two questions in. As a member of the House Judiciary Committee, we deal a lot with the FBI, so does this committee as well. Let me just ask you about Mr. DeLayden's work. Is Mr. DeLayden a member of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, to your knowledge?
Well, not to my knowledge.
Is he an FBI agent, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Is he a member of the Department of Justice?
I don't believe so.
Has the Health and Human Services ever investigated you per se about your Medicaid reimbursement, meaning something that you have not been able to answer or file another filing?
We follow all the laws at the state and federal level every day.
So Mr. DeLayden has been engaged in an investigation, has no authorization, is not a member of the FBI, which I would call dastardly and deceitful. So I'd ask you this question. Are you aware that Mr. DeLayden has pleaded the Fifth Amendment in some cases that he's engaged in?
I have read that in the paper.
Are you aware that it has been checked by RH Reality Check that Mr. DeLayden stole the identity of the president of the feminist club at Mr. Delaney's high school. Have you heard that?
I've also read that in the paper.
And let me cite not you, but RH Realty Check. Would we then, Mr. Chairman, as I finish, would we then say that we're here today to speak about the facts? And therefore, are you saying on the record today that Planned Parenthood does not use any federal funding for anything that is not authorized under the laws of the United States of America?
Time of the
Can
gentleman
she answer that question?
Of course.
We follow all the laws at the state and federal level, and whenever we find issues, we take care of them and address them.
I thank the gentleman for his courtesy. I thank this committee for its courtesy. Thank you. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman from Wisconsin.